What if I told you that while you were sleeping last night, a $500 drone flew 100 miles across international borders, past million-dollar radar systems, and struck a residential building where a family was watching television? What if I told you this wasn't a movie plot, but exactly what happened in Poland 3 weeks ago? But here's the part that should make your blood run cold. That drone wasn't alone. According to Reuters and Polish defense sources, dozens of Russian drones have crossed NATO airspace in the past month, and most of them were never intercepted, not because they were invisible, but because they were too small, too cheap, and too numerous for traditional air defense systems to handle effectively. Your tax dollars have funded the most sophisticated military in human history, with stealth fighters costing $80 million each and missile defense systems worth billions. Yet a teenager with a credit card can buy technology online that could potentially slip past these defenses and strike critical infrastructure in any American city. Welcome to asymmetric warfare, where the rules you learned about military power no longer apply. Where David doesn't just beat Goliath, David makes Goliath's expensive weapons completely useless. Here's what military planners are discovering about drone warfare. Traditional air defense systems are like using a shotgun to kill mosquitoes. They're designed to intercept $50 million fighter jets and ballistic missiles, not $500 commercial drones modified in someone's garage. According to Defense News and NATO assessments, a single Russian Shat-136 drone costs roughly $20,000 to manufacture. An American Patriot missile to intercept it costs $3.2 million. Do that math across hundreds of attacking drones, and you realize that defenders go bankrupt before attackers run out of weapons. But here's the truly terrifying innovation: drone swarm attacks. Instead of sending one large, expensive target that defense systems can track and destroy, adversaries now send dozens or hundreds of small, cheap drones simultaneously. Air defense operators face impossible choices about which targets to prioritize when their systems can only engage a fraction of incoming threats. Think about what this means for American homeland security. Every major American city has critical infrastructure, power plants, water treatment facilities, transportation hubs, financial data centers that keeps millions of people alive and civilization functioning. Most of this infrastructure was built assuming that major attacks would require expensive military equipment that only nation-states could afford and deploy. That assumption is now obsolete, according to cybersecurity firms and defense contractors. The same commercial drone technology available at Best Buy can be weaponized to carry explosives, chemical agents, or electronic warfare equipment capable of disrupting communications and navigation systems across entire metropolitan areas. The psychological dimension multiplies the physical threat. When citizens realize that their government's trillion-dollar military cannot reliably protect them from $1,000 weapons, confidence in institutions collapses. Social order depends partly on the assumption that authorities can maintain security. Drone warfare attacks that assumption directly. Russia has weaponized this psychological effect by deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure and residential areas. According to intelligence assessments, the goal isn't just physical damage, it's demonstrating that NATO's most advanced military technologies cannot protect ordinary families in their homes. Here's the mini recap. Drone warfare represents a fundamental shift where cheap, commercially available technology can overwhelm expensive military defense systems, target critical infrastructure, and undermine public confidence in government's ability to provide security. Let me show you how vulnerable American critical infrastructure really is to drone attacks, because understanding specific targets helps families prepare for potential disruptions. Power grids represent the most dangerous vulnerability. According to the Department of Energy and grid security experts, electrical substations and transmission lines are largely undefended against aerial attack. A coordinated drone strike on key nodes could potentially black out entire regions for weeks or months. But here's what makes this threat particularly insidious. Attackers don't need to destroy infrastructure permanently. They just need to disrupt it long enough to create cascading failures throughout interconnected systems. When power fails, water treatment stops working. When water systems fail, hospitals can't function. When hospitals fail, emergency services collapse. Water infrastructure presents equally serious vulnerabilities. According to EPA assessments, most water treatment facilities lack air defense systems and depend on electrical power from vulnerable grid connections. Drone attacks could introduce contaminants, disrupt treatment processes, or simply force facilities offline through damage to exposed equipment. The financial sector creates another category of high-value targets. While bank vaults may be physically secure, the data centers and communication networks that process electronic transactions are often located in industrial areas with minimal physical security. According to financial industry reports, disrupting these facilities could freeze electronic payments, banking services, and credit card transactions across entire regions. Transportation hubs multiply economic damage because they affect supply chains serving millions of people. According to Transportation Department analyses, major airports, seaports, and rail yards process goods and people whose economic value exceeds the GDP of many countries. Drone attacks that close these facilities even temporarily create shortages and price spikes that affect every family in the region. Communication infrastructure represents perhaps the most strategically important target category. Cell towers, internet exchanges, and broadcast facilities enable coordination between emergency services, government agencies, and civilian populations during crises. According to telecommunications industry assessments, destroying key communication nodes could prevent effective response to other attacks and maximize confusion and panic. The most concerning aspect is the interconnectedness of these systems. Modern infrastructure depends on complex relationships between power, water, communications, transportation, and financial networks. According to infrastructure security studies, attacking any major node creates vulnerabilities in all connected systems. Medical infrastructure presents particularly cruel targeting opportunities for adversaries willing to attack civilian populations directly. Hospitals depend on reliable power, water, communications, and supply chains to maintain patient care. According to healthcare industry reports, major medical facilities typically have emergency backup systems rated for hours or days, not the weeks or months required for infrastructure repair after coordinated attacks. Here's the mini recap. American critical infrastructure lacks adequate defense against drone attacks and depends on interconnected systems where damage to any major component can cause cascading failures affecting millions of people's access to power, water, communications, transportation, financial services, and medical care. Now let's examine what America is actually doing to defend against drone threats, because understanding current capabilities helps identify remaining vulnerabilities. Traditional air defense systems face fundamental limitations against small drone threats. According to military contractors and Defense Department assessments, Patriot missiles, THAAD systems, and other billion-dollar defense technologies are designed for threats that cost millions of dollars, not hundreds of dollars. The Pentagon is developing new counter-drone technologies, but they face significant technical challenges. Laser weapons can engage individual drones effectively, but they require clear weather and direct line of sight to targets. Electronic warfare systems can jam drone communications, but sophisticated drones can operate autonomously without external control. Kinetic interceptors, essentially bullets designed to shoot down drones, face ammunition limitations during swarm attacks. According to defense industry reports, even the most advanced systems can only engage a limited number of simultaneous targets before requiring reload time that attackers can exploit. The detection challenge may be even more difficult than the interception challenge. Small drones have radar signatures similar to birds, making them difficult to distinguish from natural phenomena that trigger thousands of false alarms daily. According to air defense operators, identifying actual threats among background noise requires human judgment that slows response times during fast-moving attacks. Geographic coverage presents another fundamental limitation. Defending every piece of critical infrastructure in a country the size of the United States would require thousands of counter-drone systems costing hundreds of billions of dollars to purchase, maintain, and operate with trained personnel. Legal and regulatory constraints complicate defense efforts. According to FAA regulations and legal experts, shooting down drones over American territory raises complex liability issues, particularly when defensive systems might cause collateral damage to civilian aircraft or property. These legal hesitations could provide crucial advantages to attackers during actual conflicts. International coordination adds another layer of complexity. Effective drone defense requires cooperation between military services, civilian agencies, local law enforcement, and international allies with different capabilities, authorities, and response procedures. According to NATO assessments, achieving real-time coordination among multiple organizations during crisis situations remains extremely challenging. The cost-effectiveness problem has no easy solution. Adversaries can build attack drones faster and cheaper than defenders can build counter-drone systems. According to economic analyses, this creates sustainable advantage for attackers that may persist regardless of defense spending levels. But perhaps the most serious limitation is human factors. Operating effective counter-drone defenses requires skilled personnel who can distinguish real threats from false alarms, coordinate with multiple agencies, and make life-or-death decisions within seconds. According to military training assessments, developing and maintaining this expertise requires years of training and experience that most organizations haven't invested in yet. Here's the mini recap. Current counter-drone technologies face technical limitations in detecting and intercepting small, cheap targets, geographic limitations in providing comprehensive coverage, legal limitations in operating over civilian areas, coordination limitations among multiple organizations, cost limitations in matching adversary production, and human limitations in developing adequate expertise. Here's what American families can actually do to build resilience against drone infrastructure attacks. Emergency supply preparation becomes more critical when drone attacks could disrupt power, water, and supply chains for extended periods, according to FEMA recommendations. Families should maintain at least 72 hours of water, food, medications, and backup power, but drone infrastructure attacks could require supplies lasting weeks rather than days. Communication planning should include backup methods that don't depend on cellular networks or internet connections. Battery-powered radios, predetermined family meeting locations, and contact information for relatives in other regions provide essential redundancy when primary systems fail. Financial preparation requires understanding that electronic payment systems could be disrupted for extended periods. Maintaining cash reserves and understanding backup payment methods protects against scenarios where credit cards, ATMs, and online banking become unavailable. Community coordination matters more during infrastructure attacks because official emergency services may be overwhelmed or unable to communicate effectively. Building relationships with neighbors and participating in local emergency response organizations creates mutual support networks that function independently of government systems. The most important preparation is psychological. Infrastructure attacks create sustained uncertainty rather than single dramatic events. According to crisis psychology research, families who discuss potential scenarios and practice emergency procedures beforehand make better decisions during actual crises. Here's the mini recap. Civilian preparation for drone infrastructure attacks requires extended emergency supplies, backup communication methods, financial contingencies, community coordination, and psychological preparation for sustained uncertainty during infrastructure repair periods. The drone revolution has fundamentally altered the mathematics of military power. Cheap, accessible technology now threatens expensive infrastructure and sophisticated defense systems in ways that traditional military planning never anticipated. This isn't about fear, it's about recognizing that asymmetric warfare has changed the rules of international conflict and domestic security. The same technological revolution that puts powerful capabilities in the hands of ordinary citizens also puts those capabilities in the hands of America's adversaries. American families can't control what happens in foreign drone factories or military planning centers, but they can control how well they understand emerging threats and how thoughtfully they prepare for scenarios that could affect their communities within hours of international crises. The communities that navigate asymmetric warfare successfully will be those that combine technological awareness with practical preparation, that build strong social networks alongside emergency supplies, and that maintain calm decision-making capabilities during extended periods of infrastructure uncertainty. Ask yourself, if drone attacks disrupted power, water, and communications in your area for weeks, would your family be prepared not just to survive, but to maintain stability and help your community recover? Subscribe to Crisis Zone and join Americans who understand that 21st century threats require 21st century thinking about security, resilience, and community cooperation in the comments. Tell us, what aspect of drone warfare concerns you most, and what's your first step toward building relevant preparedness? Because while we can't control the technology revolution that created these threats, we can control how wisely we adapt to the new reality it has created.